Welcome back to another episode of Everyday Endorphins, a mental health podcast focused on the importance of finding joy and happiness in daily living. I'm your host, Stella Stephanopoulos, and this week I got to explore some of the cultural differences on happiness between America and Europe, specifically between New York and Norway. I had the pleasure of bringing Isak Macody Falck on the podcast, who is an aspiring actor from Oslo, based in Copenhagen. We had met a few months ago when I was traveling in Copenhagen for vacation and immediately just hit it off. And I really just wanted the opportunity to get to speak to someone who grew up in Europe to give a little bit of their perspective on what contributes to happiness in these different cultures around the world. Isak is also 7 years younger than me, so it was fun to get to think back to my 19-year-old self and try to put myself in his shoes and think about how did I see happiness at that age and what's changed in my life that's made me deepen my perspective on joy. I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this episode. But before we get into it, reminder to like, rate, and review this podcast on whichever listening platform that you prefer. Hi, Isak. Thank you so much for coming on to Everyday Endorphins. It is so great having you here.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward.
The funniest thing is that we met like a little over a month ago at a bar in Copenhagen. You were so friendly and just outgoing and like willing to chat people up. Like I felt like we were just immediately friends right when I met you. And it's really hard to find that kind of outgoing, adventurous spirit, at least from what I've seen in New York or just like across the states in general. So it was very refreshing for me to just walk in, be at this bar. I was on vacation, I was traveling, and you just had such good energy.
I feel like I strive to be that way in a sort of way. I feel like we're here talking about happiness and endorphins and stuff like that. And I feel like I make myself happy in a sort of way when I try to be actively outgoing and talking to people. I haven't always been like that. I
Mm.
feel like, it's something that I've grown kind of into. I feel like it's better than not talking to people or being outgoing. I feel like if we take those two, it's better to be more outgoing than it's not being outgoing in a sort of way.
I totally agree. I feel like when you're a bit more closed off, you're not really inviting opportunity to meet new people, to learn something different. And it's interesting that you share that you haven't always been this way. So before we dive into what we're going to talk about today, I would love for you to share a little bit more about yourself, like where you grew up, where you're from, what you're doing in Copenhagen now, to really orient my audience and give them perspective around who you are and also like how we're sitting here today.
Yeah. So I'm from Oslo in Norway. I'm 19 years old. So I just got out of high school 7 months ago. Straightly moved to Copenhagen to try to pursue acting. I've done some acting before at my school, and I just thought it was really fun. It's like the perfect way to just make yourself like more available and outgoing. And it's like you force yourself to be like almost funny and get out of your shell in like a perfect way. I've had a really good time here, and in Oslo, I had a really good time as well. I had a lot of friends, parents who always supported me. They always support me now as well when I'm here in Copenhagen, and I'm living my best life.
Yeah, no, if I could rewind the clock back to 19,
Hmm.
wow, how fun would that be? But like we were talking about earlier, I do believe that every year it just gets better. And although more responsibility comes onto your plate, you also just, it's such a steep learning curve. And you're not even 20 yet. Like once you hit your 20s, it is such a steep learning curve. But you mentioned that you're from Oslo, you're from Norway. And I only have one point of reference. I have one friend who is half Greek and half Norwegian. His mom is from Norway and his dad is from Athens in Greece. And it's funny because him and I like have joked about how he can be very like not cold, but just a bit more guarded than maybe the typical American culture, or at least myself. Like I'm very outgoing, warm, and the whole thing. But I'm curious, like, is this typical of Norwegians to be a bit more reserved?
In Norway, it's like I've heard in New York, people on the somewhere are like talking to each other. Everyone's just chatting around, chatting around. If you sit on the bus in Norway and try chatting to another like person on the subway or like the bus, they're going to be like, this is the crazy person. Why are you talking to me? Like just any time of day. If you can sit alone, whenever you do that in Norway, because it's like people are so reserved and to themselves and really don't talk to other people other than friends and family in that sort of way. So it's really weird to be honest, and that's why I envy you Americans because it looks like everyone just goes around talking to each other all the time, which is like more like I want to strive to be in a sort of way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I do feel like the grass is always greener. And I've been thinking a lot about that too, because there are parts of European culture that I really romanticize and that I really admire that's so different from American culture. I think if you put it on two ends of the spectrum or two different extremes, my understanding, and maybe I mean, you can tell me what you think about this, but I feel like a lot of Europeans think that Americans are dumb and like very loud. To a degree, if you look at who is in our the politics right now and who's in our presidency, yeah, I mean, most of America, I don't know what's happened to this country, but at the same time, it's interesting because I feel like you have this maybe more romanticized view about Americans being lively and chatty and outgoing because it's so different from what you're used to.
I mean, if we talk about politics, it's like that's something we're talking about in Oslo all the time. It's like we're almost like poking fun at you guys. No offense, I love you guys, Americans, but it's crazy what's happening over there now. It's whole polarized in a sort of way, and like we're looking at it like from an outside point of view.
Mhm.
We're seeing Donald Trump standing on stage talking about all types of like crazy things, and so we're just like, how is this like happening in a sort of way? Why aren't everyone just talking about it in like because I feel like it's normalized now, which is really really scary, and it's almost spreading to other parts of the world.
It's definitely quite frightening. I don't have the answer as to how this all came to be, but something I've noticed is that it's very easy, especially for people in power, to just pull on emotion or just in general, when you think about trying to win an argument or persuade, like the art of persuasion, a lot of it is tied to, how you get at people's emotions and make them feel things. And you can either twist it in a really negative way or you can influence in a really positive way. And unfortunately, I think the state of the world now is that people in power are not using it to their to the benefit of most people, right? And that's why I think America is so polarized. Things that shouldn't be causing such, a left or a right opinion. Like people can't ever understand or appreciate the nuance. And I think it's because, to your point, there's like not a willingness to engage in discourse and conversation. And the irony is that, you just mentioned that the people in Norway are a bit more reserved and like no one's really going up and talking to people. But in a way, it seems like Europeans are able to hold more space for the nuance and actually want to engage in harder conversations. Do you agree with that? Do you have any builds on this? Because I'm just speaking from my own observation. I could be totally wrong.
No, but I mean, of course, and it's like, for example, politics in Norway at least. It's like people are like, oh no, we want to vote for that, and we want to vote for this, and why do you think that? But it's in the same way, it's like it's this like big, like the things where you can vote. It's like even though we don't agree on stuff, it's still like really small things. Which in America, it's like this big now, and people are either here or they're all the way.
Mhm.
Now I've heard about like families splitting up because one of them doesn't vote for the person that the other family wants to vote for, which I think is like completely absurd because at least in my household and in Norway in general, I think it's people vote for different groups and we still get along and we still just think, okay, but that's your view and I have my view and
Mhm.
you wins and it's still not going to be that much of a difference either way because we agree on most things but we disagree on
Mhm.
some smaller things. But I think at least in Europe we're better in that way, and what's
Mhm.
in America
Yeah.
the places.
I've seen friendships, families split up because of opposing views on big world issues. And it's quite heartbreaking, honestly. Maybe that's a tangent, but I would love to get back to really unpacking. how the culture in Norway shaped you growing up. Now you are super outgoing, you're studying to be an actor. That's a whole other perspective. We can also dive into what it means to perform and have stage presence, because I don't think I even got to share with you, but when I was growing up, I sang in the Metropolitan Opera here in New York City, which is like a very famous opera house. I wanted to be an actress as a kid, and my parents were trying to shield me from what happens when you're a child actor. I ended up falling into opera, and I did that for like 8 years, and I performed on stage. And there is there's a lot we can talk about around stage presence and like how I think that actually sharpens your social skills. But coming from a culture where people are a bit more reserved and keep to themselves, keep to their immediate social circle, do you feel like it's benefited the quality of your relationships or made it harder to find new friends? Like, how has it impacted your social life and the way that you relate to other people?
Yeah, it's actually really fun because I wasn't really that into acting before. I played in a TV show, a small TV show when I was like 13, 14 years old, which was a really fun experience, but I didn't really think much of it. I was young. I just wanted to be there, make friends and stuff like that. So it didn't really impact me that much. And then I really had a break from doing those kind of things from like 13 until my first year in high school, where we have like what's something called revue, which is like the school play, there's 8 actors from the school, some dancers and stuff like that. And then I really didn't want to go because I was scared. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. And because my mom is an actor. And then she said, I'll give you 1,000 Norwegian kroners if you go to the audition. And I was like, okay, I'm going. And then I went and then I got to get into it. And I went as like the first audition, second audition, and then third audition. And I got in. And then after that, it's been uphill. That's all I want to do because it's just something about standing on the stage, and it's more like comedy driven, the thing that it be. So it's like you have to like get the timing right and just hearing people laugh and getting that response and getting off stage and people are coming up to you and saying like, good job, it's really, really cool. It's like, wow, that was like the best feeling that I've ever felt like in the world. And my parents crying afterwards because because they just felt like it was so emotional watching their son, like almost like go back to their childish self in a sort of way,
Mm,
which they probably really missed because I was more like, oh, okay, teenager type of dude. And then seeing them like, jazz hands up on the stage, it's really good, and that's what I want to do now. In Oslo, it's something called like a russedus. We
uh-huh.
roll for like 30 days, whole of May, and then it gets really like 28 people are on that, and then the other people can't participate in a sort of way. So it gets really like excluded from everyone else, and it's like that's what I mean. Is like it's the cool people on the party bus, and then it's almost like not the cool people. That's not on the party bus. So, and it's also like really like alpha male type of mentality and those kind of things. It was good to get away from that and just get into people who wants to do acting and make people laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, even before we got onto this interview, you were sharing about kind of like that hierarchy in high school. Like there's it's very much of a culture of like respect your elders, which I think is ridiculous because there's what, like a year or two difference between each grade in high school. If you're open to it, I'd love to hear a bit more about how that impacted the way that you build friendships and relate to people. I think across cultures, you can find social climbing anywhere and clout chasing anywhere, of course. But I am curious if the way that the culture is in Norway, if that like perpetuates or kind of creates that to be more apparent. Do you feel like the way that people operate in Norway, is that contributing to more of like that divide between people, or do you feel like the because people maybe stick to their own friends and their own circles, maybe it's like a mentality of, well, quality over quantity and it's actually stronger relationships? Like what would your reflections be on that?
A really big problem in Norway now is those party buses. So actually, the government has banned those buses now from rolling
Mm,
because uh, it excludes so many people and people walk around. It's almost like what's it called in America? It's like It's like those Alpha Sigma houses, stuff like that.
Like Greek life, like
Yeah,
fraternity houses. Yeah,
my
yeah,
friend.
yeah.
So it's like it excludes people, and people go around in like hoodies with their name on the back and a logo. So it really likes it makes the people that's not on the party bus really stick out, and the people on the party bus sticks out. So it gets really like polarized, like who's the cool people who's on the party bus and who's the not cool people who's not on the party bus. And then it's like it's really good at the government now in Norway is banning those things, because I went to a school that's really, really, really like popular with those things. It's like a business school. So it's all like
Mm.
the rich people from all over Oslo goes to that school. I'm not from a really rich family, but I wanted to go there because I thought it was cool when I was 16. It's like, oh shit, that's like the hard school to get cool at. So I was like, I want to try to go there and like try to test my luck in a sort of way. And but it's awful, to be honest. So people hold to themselves, and the people on the bus only talk to the people on that party bus, the same party bus, and the other people just don't get talked to by the like the people on the party bus.
That's very interesting that the government is now starting to ban the party bus. And so the party bus, is this something that happens like right at the end of high school? Like it's an annual thing that happens and you can only go on it when you're in your last year of high school, or can any grade go on?
I mean, it usually starts in first grade, like or our first year.
Wow.
Then yeah, so then they build the bus. Then they take 28 people, make that a bus, and then it's like that gang from first, second, and third where they celebrate, because it's a lot of money involved. I was lucky enough to be on one of those buses, and we paid it's like $210,000 for the bus.
Wow. What are you doing on the bus?
It's like loud music. You sound it. Meet
Yeah.
other people like that's also on the bus, and like on stop sites and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it's so dumb. And when I look at it now in hindsight, it's like, Jesus Christ, what was I doing?
Well, in a way, there's social pressure to do something like this, even if at your core it doesn't feel aligned or it's not an activity that actually is going to give you a lot of joy. It's easy to feel wrapped up in what other people are doing and want to participate based off of how people will then, therefore judge you. And I do think that that parallel to the way social life is organized in American universities here with Greek life, like it's very similar. Maybe it's not as expensive as like that down payment of $210,000 to get on a bus, but if you're in Greek life, you're paying dues every semester. Like it does, of course, get expensive, and there is, of course, that financial barrier. But I was not in Greek life in college. I did go through the whole rush process, which is where you're going and you're meeting different people at different sororities and you try to get selected for one and the whole thing. But I never ended up sticking through once I ended up being in a sorority. I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. I also felt like the process of rushing was so superficial. People were judging you based off of how you looked or if they thought that you were valuable to them. Like it was just very, very surface level and transactional. And what bothered me the most was thinking to myself, well, why am I letting a university and a small subset of this university, like only 50% of the students were in Greek life at my school. Like, why am I letting these other 20-year-olds dictate what my social life is going to look like? And it was really hard to kind of break away from the mold because everyone was doing it. Most of my friends were doing it. I even did it, but I felt very ostracized in a way because I was not part of that social group. But it's really hard when you're in these social pressures, feeling like you need to behave a certain way or do certain things to quote unquote fit in. So that's really interesting that you can kind of draw this parallel between the way you see American universities operate with Greek life and like culturally what this party bus situation is in Norway. I think from an American perspective, Americans see Europe as like the ideal place to live, the ideal place to be for many reasons. But coming back to the theme of my podcast, which is around happiness, after being in Copenhagen, I really felt like, okay, the people here are happy. And Denmark, Norway, these are some of the happiest countries in the world. So, having grown up there, do you think about happiness differently?
Yeah, I mean, me myself is really happy. I mean, I will go around and I think I think it's also has a lot to do with like healthcare and stuff like that, because we have free healthcare and we can do whatever, or free school, and people really don't stick out that much. So it's like getting friends is not really a hard thing in Norway, even though we're like quite reserved and we don't talk to each other on the bus and stuff like that. It's like also, I feel like also that makes you like happy with yourself in a sort of way, to not always have to be around people. It's normalized to just sit with yourself a little bit, take on your headset and listen to some music you want to listen to, and not have to be social all the time, but still have some good friends you can talk to when you need them. And I think it's really good growing up in Norway and Scandinavia, like generally, because it's nice. We have a nice atmosphere. It's not that much crime. It's really good, and I feel like the difference between us and America in a sort of way is that maybe it's because it's like a more unreliable day to day. You can't really just properly relax, I think, as much as you can in Scandinavia, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, especially in New York.
Yeah, it's like you don't really have that much. I mean, at least in New York where you live, it's now noises everywhere. All people are like, "Hey, okay, sorry, come on, I'm going past you." In Norway, it's like it's not that many people who live there, so it's easier to take care of each individual in a sort of way.
It's a good reflection. I think healthcare is a big part of it. What I really loved was your comment on people being willing to sit with themselves. I think we are in a very distracted world. We are in an attention economy now, especially with social media, scrolling, like everything is just fighting for our attention. People rarely take the time to be alone and to sit with themselves. Maybe there's a cross-cultural thing we can talk about here as well, but just generally speaking, I've noticed that sometimes when I'm around a group of people and I don't feel connected to them, I feel lonelier than if I were sitting alone, having a night in, doing the things that lit me up by myself. It's interesting. Like socializing and being around people doesn't always mean that you're going to feel not lonely, right? You're young, you're 19. I'm like I mentioned, I'm also young, but I I think at that period in life as well, when you're transitioning into your 20s, it's very easy to be distracted and pulled in so many directions. Do you ever think about how this willingness to sit with yourself shows up for you? Like, do you ever reflect on the value of solo time for you and how that fills up your cup in a way that enables you to be more present with the people that you are around when you are being social?
I mean, definitely. I mean, when I was in Oslo, especially, I mean, it's like it's easy to be outgoing and stuff like that. At least I feel like it's that for me. But when I have to have those after school naps, at least 2 hours just to recharge myself after whatever that day was, it was like, because if I'm going around being, hey, what's up? Yeah, are you good? Hey. And it's like, it really drains me in a sort of way. So that quality time just to go down in my basement where I lived with like under my father and mother. It's really good to just have that. Okay, put on some music, take a nap, watch a movie all by myself with no one around, just to like
Mhm.
almost recharge and just because the most important thing is that you can manage to be good with only yourself and have fun with only yourself. Because if you can't be alone, handle being alone, then it's like it is a more fundamental problem than just
Mhm.
being social. Because I know my sister has like FOMO deluxe. It's like she can't not be home. She has to be everywhere all at once. If two of her friends are out being together, she's like, okay, where are you going? I'm coming right now. I'll be there in 15 minutes. And I can tell that she has to try to be alone with herself also sometimes, and just almost like get to know yourself, like only by yourself and with yourself in a sort of way. So I think I really, really value my alone time, and I feel like it's lacking a little bit now when I'm in Copenhagen, because I live with two people as well.
Mhm.
I don't really get that fundamental alone time that I really need. I'm having a good time. I'm happy.
I resonate with your sister. I think I have struggled in the past with like being alone. I mean, I've reflected a lot on this because I have no siblings. I'm an only child, so I've spent a ton of time by myself growing up. But I was always very social, had lots of friends, all the things. And even in my adult life, I'm always around people, and it definitely lights me up. I would say I'm more extroverted, but now I am realizing if my calendar is filled with so many social plans, I've left no time to reinvest in myself. And I've seen it take a toll on my well-being. So something I'm working on, maybe you can teach me a thing or two about this, is like actually slowing down and focusing more on just solo time. And again, I think there is a cultural element here because being in New York, it's incredibly fast paced. So you feel like you have to be doing so much. When I was in Copenhagen, I've never been to Norway, but I can imagine it's similar. When I was in Copenhagen, it was peaceful. Like people were out and doing things, but it was civilized. And I really feel like the environment invited stillness. And what I'm trying to work on right now is like, how do I cultivate that within myself? Rather than feeling like I need to travel to Copenhagen every 3 months to get a sense of like inner peace. I want to shift gears and ask a question on how you see this kind of show up in the way that you process emotions. And I know this might be kind of a more philosophical question, but when you think about Scandinavian, Norwegian culture, lifestyle, it feels more minimalist and introspective. And I want to hear from you your thoughts around how you express and experience emotion and even more difficult emotions. Because while Norway may be one of the happiest countries, it's not as if every single person who's in Norway is happy all the time. So I'd love to hear, you talked about being a bit more reserved, more introspective. People in Norway keep to themselves more. My hunch is that that doesn't mean that they are closed off emotionally. Like there's a difference between being introspective and reserved versus being closed off and not being able to communicate your emotions. So what is your perspective on that?
I feel like I handle my emotions really well. For example, I mean, I don't really know because it's hard. When I'm having a hard time, I almost like almost push it down in a sort of way, which is really not a good thing to do. But at the same time, it's almost like it works a little bit. I almost like if I trick myself into thinking it's okay, just keep on like acting like it's all okay, then then I start to feel okay in a sort of way. And I think that's like a psychological thing
Mhm.
where you can just pretend almost. I don't have a, it's hard for me to also cry. So it's really weird, but I'm handling it really good. I think I'm not walking around with like a constant stone in my, like I'm having, like I'm depressed and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm pretty lucky because it hasn't really happened that much that I'm something really devastating. Almost
Mhm.
like just all the sunshine. Hey, hello. Hey, how are you doing? Like, can I come on a podcast? Yeah, perfect. It's like this, you know. I haven't really
Mhm.
had like that big or like a big thing in my life where I really needed to feel the pain or like feel like grief and stuff like that. I mean, I lost my
Mhm.
grandfather a couple of months ago, but it's really really sad. But at the same time, I feel like he's in a better place, and I talk with my mother and my grandmother and stuff like that, and everyone's handling it pretty well. And when people around me are handling things pretty well, and it also makes me like relaxed in a sort of way and makes me feel like it's gonna be okay, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that's a really good point you bring up. If you feed more positive thoughts into your mind and you focus on like having a growth mindset, what can you learn from this experience rather than having a fixed mindset? You do kind of trick yourself into feeling happier. When I was in high school, I was on a rowing team and it's a very physically intense sport, but I would always try to like smile when I was working out because just smiling like literally tricks your brain into thinking you're happier. So you can ignore the fact that it's a very painful workout. I love your response because something I try to really promote on my podcast is that you don't have to be in crisis mode to understand your happiness is a choice and it's really within your own hands. So it's actually, it's a blessing that you, to this present date, haven't experienced a lot of grief or sorrow or tragedy in your life. You don't have to experience that to learn how to build the resilience and the mindset shifts to seek and create joy in your day to day. I think it's a refreshing perspective. And my my hunch, my hypothesis is that when there are points in time in your life where maybe something does go wrong and you're faced with a lot of difficulty and heartache, you will have the tools because you are in this practice of introspection to make yourself feel better in times that are challenging.
I hope so. That's
We'll
what I'm
check
like.
in a few years.
Yeah. I feel like it's a good way to handle my emotion. I feel like I'm doing it well, but I don't really, I'm still young. I don't know, know anything about these things really, because like I said, I haven't really experienced that much that has taken a real big like toll on me. But I mean, I hope that I'm working every day, and it's like almost like working in my mind that if eventually, and it will happen, that I get to, if I'm being good and kind to myself and made myself like a good headspace for when things will go bad, because it's doomed to happen to everyone at some point. So
Exactly.
yeah, so it's also, I think it's also good to have that kind of position. I mean, it's not like you can't really avoid bad things happening, because it's gonna happen. I mean, unless you just lock yourself in a room for 24 hours a day and don't go out ever. So it's something bad's gonna happen, and I feel like I'm preparing myself for that in a way. Not like I'm in constant fight or flight mode. It's more like subconscious kind of way,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is really
Very, very stoic of you. I love it. This is a perfect transition into a few final questions that I want to ask you, Isaac. And these are questions that I ask everyone on the show. So, my first question to you is, how do you define happiness?
woo. That's a hard question. I think I define happiness with, I mean, what do you mean define happiness in a sort of way, like what it is?
Yeah, what does it mean to be happy? Because we talked about how bad things are, bound to happen. You carry yourself with an optimism and an openness, but also you recognize that not everyone is like that. You recognize that there are things in this world that are going to cause negative emotion, right? So when we think about happiness, like something I've come to learn is that it's not about just being happy all the time. So what are your reflections on that? And when you think through that, what would your definition of what it means to be happy be?
I mean, waking up in the morning with like a good feeling inside myself and like wanting to grip the day is what I mean. And that's how I've experienced mine. And I have to choose that in a sort of way. And I think everyone has to choose that in a sort of way, how they approach it. And it's like, I feel like the first 15 minutes of your day are like the most important minutes, because it's like, that's when you decide how your day is going to be.
I do believe happiness is a choice. I talk a lot about that on the show. And especially how you start your day will set the tone for the day. Something I've been trying to do is waking up early in the mornings, giving myself extra time to make a nice cup of coffee, to journal, to practice gratitude. And I've noticed when I give myself time in the morning to really prioritize myself and have like a whole day before my work starts, I feel better equipped to handle the craziness and chaos of what the day will bring. So I do love that response. I think it's spot on. My final question to you is something that I end every episode on. And you can interpret this however you would like, but what is something that brings you a bit of endorphins or joy every day?
Every day, making people laugh, I think. And at least when, after I've had my, like the performance I had on Friday, that's what, if I think like the most endorphins, when I get the most endorphins is when like the second the light turns off while I'm doing a performance, and I'm like, oh, anyway, I don't care how it went or anything like that. It's just that constant like treading liveliness all the way, having hyper focus on what your lines are and what you have to do and dances and stuff like that. And then finally being able to, oh, work's finished. Now I can take in all the positive responses from the people who are watching. That's when I get the most endorphins. But every day I think it's making people laugh and also having like some deep conversations in a sort of way that makes something that I feel like I learn something from having a conversation, not like those just surface level, like, it was a nice weather today, small talk, but like big talk. Love a big talk. So I think
Small
like
talk
that,
is out, big talk is in.
yeah,
I love it. I
perfect.
love it. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's no other feeling than like you're done, the performance has been completed, and it's like this rush of it's like adrenaline. It's like, wow, I did that. I created this emotional experience for people. I love it, Isak. Thank you so much for being here on the show. I really hope that we get to cross paths again in Europe because I would love to just go and visit Oslo and go back to Copenhagen. But come on over to New York. Your nervous system will be in fight or flight, but it'll be a good change. Where can my listeners connect with you on social media?
On Instagram, I have Isak Macody Falck, and then I also have a TikTok, but I'm not really that active on TikTok. But I'm active on Instagram, and then hopefully I'm a really big actor in the future, and then you can look back on this and say, ah, that's it, that's it.
Well,
That,
yeah, you're about to blow up. Just you wait. This is your entry point into that, and you can pull out the interview when you've made it big. Well, thank you so much, Isak. This was amazing.
thank you.